वो सबका है, यूनिवर्सल है, पूरी कायनात का है। मैं बात कर रही हूँ मिस्टर जे फिशर की, जो है प्रोजेक्ट कोऑर्डिनेटर MSF के, मेडिसिन्स sans फ्रंटियर्स या डॉक्टर्स विदाउट बॉर्डर्स, या हमारी रियासत के लिए बड़ी ही खूबसूरत और कैची लाइन इनकी है, डॉक्टर बगैर सरहद। वेलकम मिस्टर फिशर।
Thank you very
Hello,
much.
sir. We really welcome you at our
Thank
show.
you for inviting me
It's
here.
a pleasure to have you on the show. Though there is one problem or one constraint, viewer will not be able to understand it.
Yes, I know.
But then I think MSF, the logo, your jacket,
yeah,
now it sends a signal. So language is not needed
And
anymore.
also love and sincerity has no language, so we are sure that the message of the heart will be conveyed to the heart.
So we are
That's
sure
what we
that they'll
try to
enjoy.
do, yes.
Your being here, your presence will do the job. But
Thank
still
you
we'd
very
like
much.
to know a few things from you. Primarily, the first things first.
Yeah.
We'd like to know about MSF.
Yes. MSF, which stands for Medecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders in English, or Dr. Bagair Sarat
Oh, wow.
in Urdu, if my pronunciation is okay.
Absolutely okay.
Yes.
Absolutely
So
perfect.
Doctors Without Borders, Without Borders already conveys the message that we try and help people basically all over the world, and as we say, irrespective of race, religion, creed, or political affiliation. So we try and help people just because they are people, and we want to try and take care of them.
Serve humanity.
It is how long that MSF has started this mission?
Here in Kashmir, we've worked since
Overall, I mean,
2001.
Letter, how did it begin?
When was MSF born?
Worldwide, we were founded in the 1970s by a few French doctors that were working in Africa and that decided that the current organizations that they were working with weren't really doing the kind of work that they wanted to do. So they decided to start their own organization. And that's also where our French name, Médecins Sans Frontières, comes from.
Was it world embracing vision from the very beginning? Like, had you guys decided that you want to go to every hook and corner of the world, or was it confined to a few countries initially?
No, they started in Africa, because that's where in the 1970s there were a lot of problems with lack of food, a lot of malnutrition, also a lot of conflict areas. But of course, as the name already says, Doctors Without Borders, right from the start, the idea of the organization was to provide medical care anywhere, as we say, to populations in distress, so
Conflict
to people
areas.
that are affected by natural or man-made disasters.
Man-made disasters. So MSF, we can say it is an international NGO.
Yes. Yeah.
And at present, it is quite active in 70 countries, if I'm right.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, when you are active in 70 countries, the big question that comes is funding.
Yes.
Which is very, very
Yeah.
important to
It
operate.
takes a lot of money
Because
and a
even
lot of
love cannot be
resources.
transpired.
Yeah.
Even, you know, the human things cannot be transpired unless and until you have money.
No,
It's
you
not a
And there's
need-
talking-
always
need
lots of
resources
suspicion
and
related to
funding.
money.
Yeah.
It is not a talking thing that you do and the problems
No.
go away. It is
No.
something that you actually have to do
Yeah.
on a very solid and a very concrete
And I also
basis.
think one of the best ways
What
to
is the
gain the
funding?
trust of people is that if they know from where the money is coming from, it's
Yeah.
very easy for them to trust the organization and actually like give money. So it would
Definitely.
be really
Yeah.
nice we would come to know how
Yeah.
the funding process is.
Actually, for our whole organization, we try and get as much money as possible from private donations and
Volunteers.
voluntary donations from people all over the world. And especially for our program here in Kashmir, all the money comes from private donations only. So there's no institutional funding, no government money
Funding.
involved. It's just private people from all over the world that donate money to our organization because they believe in the values and the work of our organization.
Work and values. So let's now come to the
Yes.
charter of MSF.
Yeah.
What
some,
is it?
Some very important words in our charter are neutrality, independence, and impartiality, which means what I mentioned before. We try to help people irrespective of race, religion, creed,
Or
political
religion, nothing.
affiliation.
Yeah.
So that also means our medical programs, they are not politically linked. We do not, for instance, if we work in conflict areas, we do not choose sides. We help people from all sides, again, because we try and treat people as people and not because they are linked to a certain political group, not because they are linked to one specific religion. We try and treat everybody as people.
Since health, it is a four-faceted thing. We have four things when we talk about health. Do you focus mainly on mental health?
Worldwide, we have programs in all different aspects of health, but here in Kashmir, we focus very specifically on mental health.
Any specific reason for focusing specifically on mental health?
When we started in Kashmir, we had the feeling that there were a lot of mental health problems in the valley related to the ongoing situation.
Conflicts and all that, yes.
Yes.
And also in 2005, we did quite a big survey.
A need assessment of the people, maybe?
Yeah, it's kind of an assessment to see how much we are needed and what was needed. And one of the things we saw was that also the biggest gap, so the biggest difference between the needs of the population and what was already provided was on mental health. So that's why we decided to start a counseling program where people, anybody who has any mental health problems, which can be anxiety, stress, depression, they can come to our clinics. They can come to our clinics and then speak to one of our counselors. And that's something that people don't always understand, because people often think they need a pill or an injection to get better. But actually, in many cases, just talking to somebody.
It's a talking medicine.
It's talking medicine.
And definitely it's picking up in our state also. For that, we thank MSF that counseling is today being taken as one of the best options one can have.
And all the inhibitions that
as well as physical ailments. So the credit goes to MSF for starting this trend and for making people mentally educate about what a counseling is. नाज़रीन, हम बात कर रहे हैं टॉकिंग मेडिसिन की। जी हाँ, बात करने से कभी आपने गौर किया है, अगर खुशी है तो आप उसको जाहिर करते हो दुगनी हो जाती है, अगर गम है खबरें हैं। फिलहाल प्रोग्राम में वक्त है आगे बढ़ने का। We again come to the guest. Since we were talking about MSF, a bit of it we touched. Now we'll talk about you as a person. So Mr. Fisher, what are you actually?
What am I? Ooh, that's a very difficult question. It could turn into a very, very long answer. Like you already introduced me, my name is J.J. Fisher. I was born in Holland. So I am from Holland, and I work with MSF
tulips
now as a project coordinator. Definitely, yes, lots of tulips.
Lots of strawberries.
Earlier this year, I also actually visited the tulip gardens here in
Srinagar.
So which tulips are better, the Holland tulips or the Kashmiri tulips?
I will say they're equally good.
They're equally good, politically correct.
Any comparisons you can draw between the two?
Well, what I really liked about the tulip gardens here in Srinagar is that you have the mountains in the background.
Exactly.
Because Holland is a completely flat country. It's a plain. And here I could see tulips with these beautiful mountains.
You seem to be a true nature lover. That's the only difference the two gardens have.
I was just wondering, what's with your surname Fisher?
Fisher?
Yes.
Well, actually, I'm only half Dutch.
Oh, you're half
Dutch. My father's side of the family is from the Czech Republic. So Fisher is actually a name that comes from my father's side, of course. So
what do you do? What else do you do other than being project coordinator? Because as I'm told, you are an architect also.
Yes, I studied architecture in Delft in Holland, and I actually worked in two different professions before I joined MSF.
Now, you are no more into architecture and all that activities? No. What made you to join MSF? Two different things. You know, architect is something very technical by mind.
Yes.
This is MSF is something that has to do
more
medical
with
the heart.
Service to him.
It is something to do with the heart, entirely involvement of your heart. Primarily, you are involved with your mind only. How did these both things merge or blend?
It's actually a nice story. Because, like I said, I studied architecture. I worked as a project manager for building projects for a while in Holland. But actually, pretty much as long as I can remember, I always wanted to do something outside of Holland, something different, also something helping people in another way. So once I'd worked for a few years as a project manager, I got the feeling that if I didn't change my life now, that I would be stuck doing that same job maybe for the next 10, 20, 30 years. So then I started looking around for other options, looking around for options to work abroad, maybe working with an NGO, although at that time I didn't really know what kind of organization I really wanted to work for. But then, of course, I also told all my friends and people around me that I was looking for something different.
Like this.
And then actually a friend of mine told me, well, you might want to try Doctors Without Borders. Because, of course, I thought that it would be only doctors working with this organization, but
Well, that's
because
very
there's
important
so
too.
much other work surrounding the medical work as well. It needs a lot of organization, it needs a lot of planning, there's
Yeah.
finances involved.
Yeah, yeah.
So then I heard that actually I might have a chance to work with
Whatever
doctors
you
without
learned in
borders.
architecture, all those principles, did you ever think the same knowledge was very useful and you were actually ready to apply it to the MSF work
It-
also? Because
yeah.
you're a project director
Yeah.
here as well. You
It
think
is,
there is
it's
a link?
definitely useful
It is,
as well.
it is useful.
The link is not very direct, of course,
But of
but
course,
in architecture you have to do a lot of planning. It's a lot about how to organize a building, how to
here it
organize
is. Here
the
it is
work.
organizing the
And
manpower,
that's the same,
HR
organizing
activities.
power.
Okay, ideas,
HR.
gains, and
Yeah,
other goals and other aims.
Yeah.
How did you actually qualify for MSF? Because if we go through the job prospectus of MSF, how did you qualify? How did you find a place for yourself to apply? What was the response?
Actually, in Holland it starts with just filling out a little form on a website, but then after that there's quite a long process of interviews, of even doing some technical tests, because my first position with MSF was much more on the technical side,
Okay.
and in a way also a bit more closely linked to architecture,
Okay.
because I was also involved in some of the renovations of buildings we have
Okay.
for our services.
Mm-hmm.
But the selection process is quite heavy because, as you can understand, we are a small team of foreign staff living in a different country. In Kashmir, I have to say, quite luxury and a really nice place and beautiful surroundings.
Yeah.
But in other countries, we also sometimes work in the middle of
Very
the desert
harsh
where there's
conditions.
nothing
Yes, of course.
else available.
Yeah.
And then working together with a small group of people,
You need the
not
right
only
people to form
working
that group.
together, but also spending all the evenings together,
Yeah,
spending
yeah,
all the weekends
yeah,
together.
exactly.
You also need to make sure that people are up to that task as well.
Task,
So it's
yeah.
actually quite a heavy selection
So you
process that
basically
involves a
have
lot
to-
of talking as
Yes.
well.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
So young people, can they work as volunteers with your organization even if they're not from the medical background?
Yes.
They
Yeah.
can. And
we
what's the
have
procedure?
many different positions, and a lot of the positions are of course medical positions, medical, paramedical, nurses, psychologists, medical doctors, surgeons in some programs. But we also need people that deal with the finance, with the HR. We need
Exactly.
people that deal with the cars that we use. They need to be fixed as well. They need to be running properly. So we need
Yes.
people with a technical
Do you need a
background.
lot of
as well.
Allied
translators?
people with it, all allied people with it, you know, what actually makes the game run, what actually makes the show
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about some of your projects, especially about your Kashmir project. How did it
Thank you.
start? What is the
What are you
response?
doing here?
And what
Very
are
nice.
the
Yeah.
plans now? But first of all, we go for a package. Once we are back, we connect with you again.
Thank you.
जी हाँ नाजरीन, वक्त है जम्मू सेगमेंट का। जम्मू पठानकोट के
नाज़रीन, आप देख रहे हैं प्रोग्राम गुड मॉर्निंग जे&के। हम बात कर रहे हैं मिस्टर जे फिशर से, जो प्रोजेक्ट कोऑर्डिनेटर हैं इस वक्त डॉक्टर बगैर सरहद के। So, Mr. Fisher, now let's come to Kashmir chapter. Since you are there as a
Yeah.
project coordinator, you have been here since December and since Jan, and you will
Since
be here
January.
till December.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this chapter. When did it start in Kashmir? First of all, obviously, you must have detected that we'll go to Kashmir, must have pinpointed,
Yeah.
that came here, had an assessment, and mental health was a priority at that
Yes,
point in time.
definitely.
I
Yeah.
guess you started in 2002 or something like
I
that.
think 2001.
One.
Yeah, so
Okay. How has
almost
the journey
12
been
years
since
now.
then?
Sorry?
How has the journey been since then?
It's been, I think, a very nice and interesting journey for everybody involved, for the international staff, because we always have a core group of international staff as
Exactly.
supervisors for the
Okay.
project.
Okay.
But then we also work with a lot of local staff, a lot of Kashmiri staff, and I think the journey has been very interesting for everybody because we've worked and visited in so many different places in the valley, and of course our program is constantly changing as well. So we work in some areas for a while, then we move to a next area. So it's a very
been like-
interesting.
On what
journey.
basis do you select which areas you want to work with when you come to a new place?
We try and look for places where we think the biggest problems are, and then we go and work there.
Okay.
There.
Now that you started your work in 2003, let's now first talk about challenges, then achievements.
Yeah.
Challenges first.
Of course, one challenge for us
Sorry.
is always we are an international organization. We are foreigners that come to Kashmir to help, and people are sometimes a bit suspicious about, well, why do you come all the way from Europe to Kashmir? Is it really to help people? Are there maybe any other motives behind it? But the good thing is, I would never ask people just to trust me on my word. I just ask people to look at our work, and we always see that if people come to our clinics, to our facilities, they see that they are helped very well, that our people are very professional, and we always see that after the initial maybe shock or surprise, that people are very happy with our services and very happy that we are there. And actually recently we've also received some appreciation letters from the Awqaf committees from 2 communities that also expressed their appreciation of our services. So for us that was a very big achievement, and
you feel encouraged.
Yes, very encouraging, and it feels like a very nice kind of a little crown on some of our work.
Yes. This was the challenge part. We'll come to achievements, but after this segment. नाज़रीन, आप देख रहे हैं प्रोग्राम गुड मॉर्निंग J&K. So, Mr. Fisher, constraints are over, challenges have been overcome.
Yes.
Now it's time to rejoice, to celebrate, because now you have achievements also.
Yes.
What are the achievements of which you are proud and which you want to continue?
Yeah, it's always, with our organization, achievements always come at times of great need. So it sometimes sounds a bit weird or strange to talk about achievements, but some of the things I'm very proud of in our work here in Kashmir are our response in 2005 after the earthquake in Kashmir, where we helped a lot of people that had lost everything, that lost their houses, with medical care, and also with what we call non-food items, but things like kitchen kits, help them rebuild shelter. Then we did a similar response, which was luckily a smaller disaster, but in Ladakh in Leh, the big flooding in 2010.
Cloudburst we had.
Yeah. So we also helped out a large number of people.
Of that.
Yeah. And then more recently, last winter, there were, I think, 3 or 4 bigger fire incidents in Srinagar city, which is something that unfortunately happens almost every winter, I think. And we helped out some families that had lost pretty much everything in a big fire. They've lost their houses, all their belongings. So we helped them out to get started again with things like, it was in winter, so with warm clothing, with kitchen sets, with basic shelter.
Now, these we're talking about the disasters, the calamities where you rush instantly. But since MSF has been working on post-trauma stress disorders for a pretty long time, if you go through the newspapers now, of late it's a trend that every time we have somebody in the news who has consumed poison, the suicidal tendencies are on a rise in Kashmir. Have you taken notice, or are you shifting your priorities towards that? Are you trying to make that a thrust area now?
Actually, this is one of the reasons why we originally started in Kashmir with a mental health program as well, because we saw that there were, in just looking at the numbers, that the suicide rate was actually very high for a population like Kashmir. So that was one of the original reasons why we came to the valley in the first place. And it's in mental health, it's very difficult to say whether you are really helping or not, because it's not like with a medical problem with a thermometer, somebody has a fever.
That is what we basically wanted to ask. Tell me something. Since we have conflicts, it can be familial, it can be social, racial, or interpersonal conflicts. They are there with everybody. What are the indicators? What makes you to approach a person, and then the situation does not change, the circumstance does not change? So how do you feel that you are catering to the person's need exactly, or you are raising his mental health standards? What are the parameters and what are the indicators at the same time?
It's a very difficult problem, because, like I said, it's with medical a disease. You can just measure somebody's temperature, and they're sick if the temperature is high, and they're better when the temperature is normal. With mental health, it's a lot more difficult. But what we do with counseling is, because we also realize often we cannot change or help the problem. If somebody has lost a close relative, we cannot bring that relative back. So what we do with counseling is to try and help people cope with the situation that they've experienced.
Because
so
I
we
remember
try and
also,
help them to deal
to become
with what
empowered
they have
themselves.
Monitor them in that way. So
And
you
then
try to make him mentally that strong, create his own support system, raise his levels of acceptance. At the same time, maybe the levels of surrender also. Whatever has happened,
you have to accept that
it
something
and
bad has
something
happened.
bad has happened.
So it is basically, you know, trying to find out his own virtues and just facilitating the process within his own self to be a better and a stronger human.
Because I think
because
the whole
it's
point
actually in
is,
counseling, it's also quite important that the counselor does not impose
Imposing
solutions
himself
on the
on the
person.
person.
The person has to really come up with their own their own solution, their
He
own
doesn't
way
need
to
to
deal
advise,
with the problem.
he doesn't need to give any sort of suggestions. It is
So
the
are you also
person
trying
who
to
wakes
say
up.
that the individual has to empower himself? Nobody can give you a solution to your problem. It's actually you
very
who has to
often-
find a solution.
Very often it really is about the person finding their own solution
For their
on
own
how to
problem.
deal with the problem. But if you are in the middle of that problem, it's very difficult to find that solution purely by yourself.
Exactly.
Because
You
very
need
often
support.
people don't even realize
That they have a problem.
Yeah.
And that's also quite a big part of our work.
Yes.
Is
Identify
trying
the
to
problem
raise
first.
awareness to
Yes.
let people know that mental health can be a problem. And then hopefully they will find our counseling centers,
Exactly.
either ours or other facilities that are available now in the family.
So one more important
Exactly.
question I was wondering, people who are under stress, do you have any helpline? Can people get in touch with you people immediately if they have any problem?
we don't have a phone number or a helpline, but we work in 5 locations in Kashmir. So we work in 3 hospitals in
Can we name
Srinagar,
them?
Can you?
in SMHS,
Yes.
in JVC, and in
JVC.
Skim Saura. And then we also work in District Hospital Baramulla. And very recently, and that's another achievement for us, we've opened a counseling center in Sopore, Sub-District Hospital.
So people can come to these centers because
Yes.
luckily being
Yeah.
depressed does not mean that you have to panic. It's a very slow thing that creeps in very
Yes.
slowly.
Yeah.
You just need to identify your problem.
Yeah.
And at the same time, if you sit with the counselor, you will identify your solution also.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you have any
Yeah.
of these problems, you can just jump into any of these hospitals and get into
Yeah.
contact
Yeah.
in your office.
We
What do you
don't
want?
work everywhere every day,
Okay.
but we work quite closely with the doctors in the hospital and
Hospital.
also with the psychiatrists in the hospital.
Okay.
So if we are not there, there's always somebody there who can tell people when to come back, which days and which
Exactly.
times our counselors
Exactly,
are
because
present.
you record all the details and all the one-to-one interactions.
Yes.
Then you
Yeah.
monitor the patient.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then your role diminishes with every meeting.
Yes,
and
hopefully.
participation becomes more and more
Yeah.
active.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
can designate he's now healthy mentally.
Yeah.
तो चलिए नाज़रीन अपनी सोच को रखिए चुस्त और दुरुस्त क्योंकि अगर हमारी सोच सही है तो ज़िंदगी बहुत आसान हो जाती है। फिलहाल प्रोग्राम में आगे बढ़ते हैं, एक और सेगमेंट लेते हैं। नाज़रीन आप देख रहे हैं प्रोग्राम गुड मॉर्निंग जे&के। हम कोऑर्डिनेटर से बात कर रहे हैं जो हैं मिस्टर जे फिशर। जी हाँ, डॉक्टर बगैर सरहद के। आज हमने एक सरहद तो तोड़ ही दी है, वो ये लैंग्वेज की। नाज़रीन हमें इस चीज़ का बिल्कुल एतराफ़ है कि बहुत सारे ऐसे बुज़ुर्ग होंगे जो शायद आज की हमारी ये बातचीत नहीं सुन सके होंगे, लेकिन समझ नहीं सके होंगे रादर। लेकिन चूंकि ये कोऑर्डिनेटर है प्रोजेक्ट के, आज हमने इनके साथ बात की है। बहुत जल्द हम किसी ऐसे शख्स को MSF से बुलाएंगे जो कश्मीरी और उर्दू में इसी चीज़ को हमें ट्रांसलेट करके सुनाए और समझाए। So, Mr. Fisher, what we were saying is that since we're talking to you today, most of the viewers won't be able to really understand what's going on.
No,
So next time
unfortunately
what
my
we do-
Urdu is not very good.
Next time what we do, we get somebody from the MSF, we can speak in Urdu and Kashmiri so that
Could be very
people
nice.
connect what was being
There is
discussed.
one word, Faraji, he can say it very nicely. Mr. Fisher can say
हाँ,
that very
we can go.
nicely.
So we were talking about the importance of media. Since
Yes.
this program is
Yeah.
it has its own importance, so we have to touch those parameters.
Yeah.
Now, how far is media important to MSF?
It's
It has always
also
been.
important for us, and it has been always important, and especially here in Kashmir, because we also know our own constraints. We have a limited number of people. We cannot reach everybody. So a few years back, we started a radio program called Alo by Alo.
Can you say it again? Louder? Can you say
Once
it
more,
louder?
Alo by Alo.
Alo, by Alo. Do you know what it means?
It's call, brother, call.
Exactly.
Yes.
When you call somebody, it's
Yeah.
alo by alo.
Yeah.
Come to me, I'm calling you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we started that radio show with the idea that it's a bit of entertainment for people. It
Yeah.
should be something that is fun to listen to,
Yeah.
but at the same time it informs people about
There's a
mental
message
health
also.
problems, about potential issues, about signs and symptoms,
Mhm.
when maybe people should look for help.
Approach, yeah.
Yeah. And it's been a very successful program. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people in the valley here and a lot of viewers of this program probably know MSF through Alo by Alo, through the radio show.
Yeah. What about now into television?
Well, that's what we've been working on for the past 1.5, 2 years. We have actually shot on high definition TV, on high definition, on good format. We've shot a television series, 13 episodes of half an hour, with the same idea in mind, to provide a bit of entertainment, but to also
Visual
inform
aids
people.
and
Yeah.
messages
Yeah.
through that
And
program.
we are hoping to start airing the show, if everything goes well, on this same channel, somewhere over the next 1 or 2 months.
Great.
So
Welcome.
we're
Welcome
very
to our
excited.
channel.
Yes, we're very
Welcome to our
excited about
itinerary.
this.
Welcome to our channel. We'll be looking forward for that show.
Thank you.
नाज़रीन, बातचीत का तसलसल तो रोकना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि वक्त है कुछ और ख़ास और अहम बातों को उन्हें कैसे भूल सकते हैं। वो बातें हैं तो तभी बाकी बातों का भी वजूद है। अखबार नाज़रीन देख रहे हैं प्रोग्राम गुड मॉर्निंग J&K. So Mr. Fisher, since it's 9, it's time to say bye. But first we would like to thank you.
Really, thank
It
you
was
so much.
really a pleasure to have you in the show, and we look forward for another meeting on this show with you before
Thank
you
you very
leave this
much.
place in December. And again, looking forward for Alo by Alo.
Great.
Television.
Thank you so
Thanks a
much.
lot.
It was
Thank
an
you very
honor to
much,
have you
and it
here.
was an honor to be here as well. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
and all the best to your efforts, to your mission.
We hope you
the
keep up the
torch
good work
bright.
going.
Thank you very much.
नाज़रीन, ये था आज का एपिसोड। तो कहीं ना कहीं जानने की हमने आज ये कोशिश की कि शायद दिलों में दरारें और सरहदें नहीं होनी चाहिए। तो चलिए पहल करते हैं, शायद मुमकिन हो जाए। आज के लिए बस इतना ही। कल फिर मुलाकात करेंगे आपसे सुबह 8 बजे। कल तक के लिए आप रखिए अपना ख्याल, नेक दुआओं में हमें ज़रूर याद रखिए। अल्लाह हाफ़िज़।
खुदा हाफिज नाज़रीन।